Just recently, Dustin Poirier had his run-in with the police, where he ended up getting arrested after drunkenly threatening to fight them. And while much of the MMA community has laughed at the way Poirier was acting in the police body cam footage, Dustin's incident is one of many examples of fighters struggling to cope with a life without fighting. As he posted on Instagram after his arrest, "I'm at the point where I need some help. Walking away from fighting hasn't been easy on me, and alcohol isn't the answer. It has ruined my father's life, and I will not allow it to ruin mine. My family deserve me at 100%. I'm trying to do everything I can to get my mind right and take the right next steps." For many fighters, retirement isn't a blissful release from labor like it is for ordinary workers. Albeit the current generation of workers probably won't get to retire because we will have to work till we're dead to pay off the debts the boomers have left for us, but that's besides the point. Most fighters retire in their late 30s to mid 40s, when they still have another half of their life to figure out. Oftentimes, they fight far past the point at which they should retire, and even if they retire, they often end up thinking of making a comeback, and sometimes they actually do, just to take more damage. And it's because, without fighting, many of them lose their way. Just to give a few examples, there was Tony Ferguson, who got brutalized by Justin Gaethje when he was 36 years old, and then proceeded to go on a saddening 8-fight loss streak in the UFC, with his final fight in the promotion taking place when he was 40 years old. Throughout this losing streak, fans were calling for Tony to retire because they didn't want to keep seeing him take unnecessary damage. But he refused to do so, continuing to believe that he could achieve the heights he once reached. And then, of course, there's the infamous example of BJ Penn, who went on a similarly depressing 7-fight losing streak in the UFC, and then proceeded to go on one of the worst downward spirals in the history of the sport. BJ Penn got KO'd in a street fight outside of a bar in Hawaii in 2019, has been arrested a total of 7 times, including arrests for domestic violence, and has claimed that his mother and other family members are imposters, which, as his mother went on to state, is a sign of Capgras syndrome, a psychiatric delusional disorder that is diagnosed in individuals with schizophrenia or neurodegenerative conditions linked to brain damage. And perhaps, most tragically of all, there's the tale of Stephan Bonnar, a fighter who was pivotal in the success of the UFC through his fight with Forrest Griffin on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, but ultimately passed away before his time due to a fentanyl overdose. And this pattern of fighters suffering in retirement isn't only limited to those in the United States. For example, Takeru, a 3-division K1 champion and a kickboxing legend, posted this recently on his Instagram following his retirement in April. "For over a month recently, I'd been suffering from recurring panic attacks. I was taken to the hospital by ambulance multiple times and caused a great deal of trouble for my family and the people I work with, so I was hospitalized to undergo proper treatment. Spending those days alone in my hospital room gave me time to truly face myself. It made me keenly aware, all over again, of how difficult it is to control one's mind and how vital mental health is. I don't know the exact cause, but I suspect it stems from the mental and physical stress and strain of the last few years. I'd been holding it together by staying constantly on guard, but once I retired, that barrier came down, and I think I just collapsed under the weight of it all. After my retirement match, I won and was finally free from the hardships I'd been facing, so I should have been happy. But day by day, I stopped feeling any joy or excitement. I lost my appetite and couldn't even enjoy the taste of food anymore." So, why exactly is it that many fighters struggle with retirement? And what can help retired fighters find meaning in their daily lives once their careers are finished? In this somewhat more serious video, we will go over the factors behind why fighters struggle with retirement and what can be done. So let's get started. So, starting with why fighters tend to struggle with retirement, let's start by breaking up the factors into 2 categories, the material and the psychological. Material factors include a fighter's finances, their set of skills outside of fighting or the lack thereof, and other things that exist outside of a fighter's head. And psychological factors include things like a fighter's personality type, mental illnesses, and a loss of purpose. Starting with the material factors because they're easier to explain, one of the big reasons why fighters just can't seem to stay retired is because they are simply broke. And the best example of this, of course, is the money man himself, Floyd Mayweather. Over the course of his boxing career, Floyd Mayweather has made an estimated $1.2 billion. However, there have recently been multiple signs pointing to the fact that Mayweather may be on the verge of declaring bankruptcy. On May 22nd, 2026, ESPN reported that Floyd Mayweather was suing his former manager, Jonah Rechnitz, an Orthodox Jewish real estate advisor and investment manager, for $175 million, alleging that Rechnitz had defrauded Floyd over the course of many years. And on June 16th, 2026, it was reported that Floyd Mayweather was being charged in Nevada for posting a bad check for a sum of $200,000 to buy a watch, with the reports stating that the Wells Fargo bank account that the check was linked to had, quote, insufficient money, property, or credit to pay the amount in full. And on top of that, as Spencer Cornelia pointed out in a few of his videos, according to DMs that he had leaked to him from Jonah Rechnitz, it seems like Money Mayweather owes millions of dollars to the IRS, is pawning off his jewelry, and is also racking up legal fees by suing multiple people at the same time. And on top of that, with his rematch with Pacquiao postponed indefinitely and his bout with Mike Zambidis in Athens cancelled, it looks like Money Mayweather really may go broke. Floyd's money problems are becoming so serious that when Dana White was asked about them, he alluded to potentially giving Floyd Mayweather a contract with Zuffa Boxing.
Thoughts are on the unfortunate news that we're seeing so many headlines with Floyd Mayweather Jr. losing like $170 million. Just your opinion on that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one, and I've talked to him about it, but I don't know enough about it. You hear all these different stories. I think you have to wait to see how this thing's going to play out in court for him. But when somebody works as hard as he did, and amasses the type of wealth that he had, and then they lose it or it gets stolen or whatever the deal is, it's horrible, and it happens a lot in professional sports. Who knows? Anything is possible. Maybe we could do something and figure it out for him.
The main reason why Floyd Mayweather is having these money problems is quite simple. His lifestyle is absurdly extravagant. He flies private, owns a fleet of luxury cars, and has bought countless pieces of jewelry. Floyd Mayweather earns a boatload of cash per fight, but his spending outpaces that. And while this problem is most pronounced with Floyd because of his high profile, many MMA fighters deal with the same problem, albeit on a smaller scale. Notably, with Mike Perry, he posted a tax bill for over $800,000 from his fight with Jake Paul, and then went on to state that he had just over $500,000 in the bank account to pay it off. And while Mike Perry did go on to have his fight with Nate Diaz on the MVP MMA card to earn a bit more, what this highlights is a lack of financial literacy among fighters. From trusting the wrong people to handle their money, to spending freely without thinking about taxes, a lot of fighters don't seem to know what to do with money. And this is largely a result of many fighters coming from financially disadvantaged backgrounds, where they often lived in families that were living paycheck to paycheck. However, bad financial planning and a lack of money to retire comfortably on isn't the only material factor limiting fighters. The other big one is their lack of marketable skills outside of fighting. For top fighters who have pursued a career in the sport for 2 decades or more, they are obviously going to be far, far behind if they were to try and get a normal office job. The hard skills learned in the fight game can't be transferred to an office job, like knowing how to throw a perfect spinning wheel kick doesn't transfer to knowing how to use Microsoft Excel. And even if a fighter were to acquire these skills and perhaps even have a college degree in something like business administration or marketing, they wouldn't be a great candidate from a hirer's perspective. I mean, who would you rather hire? A 22-year-old fresh out of college or a 45-year-old former fighter with brain damage? I mean, the answer is quite clear there, right? Due to the amount of commitment it requires to stay at the top of the fight game, most fighters simply don't have the time to develop skills outside of it, and as a result, they often have to find jobs that are within the combat sports sphere. And now, starting with the psychological factors, I think these are the more significant ones, as the fighters who we often see struggling the most with retirement tend to be dealing with the psychological stress of retirement more than the material ones, albeit that is just my surface view of it. In the 2018 paper, Prevalence and Correlates of Psychological Distress Among Retired Elite Athletes, a Systematic Review, which examined the correlates and prevalence of psychological distress among the retired elite athletes across 40 studies, it was found that among most athletes, psychological distress was at a similar frequency to the general population. But there is a caveat to this finding, and here I will quote, "However, subgroups reporting medical comorbidities, significant pain, a greater number of concussions, less social support, and adverse psychological factors were at greater risk for psychological distress. And this is specifically true for combat sports athletes. According to a 2009 analysis of retired Finnish athletes, there was a 3 times increased risk for the onset of depression among retired combat sports athletes, and increased physical activity would alleviate the onset of anxiety among these athletes. And according to a 2017 study, while the prevalence of alcohol-related deaths and diseases did not differ between former athletes and controls, retired combat sports athletes and weightlifters were at greater comparative risk than endurance athletes, jumpers, and hurdlers. Now, while the papers didn't go into the specific causes of the psychological distress, we can speculate on what those are based on individual fighter testimonies. In a 2020 interview that the former UFC middleweight Brian Stann did with The Athletic, Brian Stann stated, quote, "I think the best advice I've ever received was, after my first middleweight fight, a mentor of mine told me, don't ever let this become your identity. I knew exactly what he meant, because once that becomes your whole identity, then you never really transition. You're always living in the past. But just because I heard that and appreciated it and believed it, that didn't mean it was easy. For many fighters who have dedicated their lives to the sport for decades, or in the case of fighters who started training while they were young, since they were children, training and fighting is all they know. The identity of fighter is psychologically difficult for them to rid themselves of. The routine of going to the gym, training 4 hours a day, preparing for an opponent, and facing them is a difficult one to get out of once you've done it dozens of times over the course of 20 plus years. I'll add here that many retired fighters become obese after they retire due to the unhealthy relationship they developed with food while cutting weight, with an example here being Daniel Cormier. And it's no wonder why they develop such a bad relationship with eating, as a weight cut basically comes down to depleting oneself of nutrients to make weight, and then ballooning up by 20 to 30 pounds by consuming fluids and fast digesting carbohydrates like white rice and sugar 24 hours out from a fist fight. And when it comes to the struggles of retirement for a fighter, I think Dustin Poirier himself described it best on Joe Rogan's podcast months prior to his arrest.
And that type of stuff is like, the last time I was on the show, what I was talking about, it's like a gift and a curse, man. It's like you have to be all in at something. Those kind of people who are built like that, whether it's fighting or drinking or whether it's good or bad, you're going all in. It's dangerous.
That's the problem, yeah.
The retiring is scary, man. Days are long. I have a lot of time. I don't have to get ready for a fight. I don't,
You're still a young man, too. You still have a whole lot of life ahead of you.
37, man.
Yeah, so it makes you think, like, what do I do now? What do I do with my future? What do I do? What do you want to do?
Dude, I kind of got, like, for a week or so, I wouldn't say depressed, but I kind of got into, like, a funk. Like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? Every day I would wake up for the last 20 years. How can I be a better fighter? What's new in fitness? How can I push myself? I want to be the champion, and then, boom, you lay the gloves down and you wake up and you're a civilian. Like, it feels crazy, It's like I'm relearning who I am. Like, I always knew fighting was just something I did. It wasn't who I was. But after 20 years of doing it, even though you know that and you think that, like, I don't know who I am without fighting.
How long did it take?
I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a lot of things.
Right.
But, like, fighting was a cloud in my mind that never went away for 20 years.
Right.
And now I wake up and it's gone. Like, what do I do? I'm still trying to find out, Joe. I don't know.
Due to how all-encompassing a career in fighting can be, life becomes impossible to imagine without it. However, there are many people who make their jobs their entire identity, but don't end up in handcuffs. So what is different for fighters? Well, first and foremost, there's the influence of brain damage and CTE, which has been shown to increase anxiety, shorten tempers, and cause erratic behavior. The loss of identity and meaning, compounded with a brain condition that heightens such issues, is a recipe for disaster. And when you add substances like alcohol or recreational drugs on top of that, you get the tragic stories I was talking about at the start. This can be particularly problematic when someone begins to self-medicate their anxiety with alcohol, which when consumed in large amounts can lead to further brain damage from conditions like Wernicke's encephalopathy, which causes further neurodegeneration. Another potential factor that I'm currently speculating about, albeit I haven't found any specific studies to support it yet, is the relationship between risk-seeking behavior and combat sports. Risk-seeking behaviors are defined as preferring uncertain options with potentially higher rewards over safer alternatives with lower expected value. Examples of these behaviors include gambling, reckless driving, substance abuse, and extreme sports. And well, there aren't many sports that are as risky as combat sports, where you're constantly subjecting yourself to the risk of permanent disfigurement, disability, neurological damage, or even death. However, by engaging in the risk-seeking behavior that is combat sports, fighters may feel a sort of high off of the danger of the ordeal. And here, I'll have Justin Gaethje verbalize what I'm getting at.
Every single time I get to do it, it's the most amazing feeling I've ever had.
Would you say you're addicted to it?
Oh, I'm definitely addicted to it, 100%. I mean, there's no matching. You know, people get addicted to drugs, I get addicted to adrenaline, and I love it.
Is the adrenaline pre-fight, mid-fight, post-fight? Where's the big high for you?
It's as soon as the bell rings. As soon as the bell rings, there's like, it's just over. You know, I've never retained a piece of a fight because I go into a mode and it's just a completely reactionary and intuitive. And again, it comes with convincing myself how much danger I'm in through the preparation. So, you know, I've been getting ready to feel that and understand how much danger I'm in. Then it allows me to go there as soon as the fight starts.
Over the course of decades, many fighters likely end up conditioning themselves to experience the high of fighting. So once they retire, they may end up looking for other outlets to engage in risk-taking behaviors, leading to issues like substance abuse or getting into confrontations with law enforcement. However, please be aware that I don't have anything concrete to back this up with yet, so yes, it's just my own personal theory. But now, how can fighters deal with the material and psychological issues caused by retirement? Well, up next, I'll give a few examples of what may help fighters to ease into a second career. Although, please do note, I'm not a financial specialist or psychologist, so these aren't prescriptive or anything like that. And frankly, they're just ideas based on observations I've made. So starting with what fighters can do during their careers to ensure they have a stable retirement, I think that one clear takeaway that can be gleaned is to encourage fighters to be much more financially responsible. Instead of building a combat sports culture around showing off wealth through living luxurious lifestyles and gambling money away at the blackjack table, fighters probably need to be taught early on into their careers that they have 20 years at the most to make life-changing money, and that they need to handle that money carefully so as to not end up destitute later on. Just a bit of basic financial literacy, combined with encouraging more frugal lifestyles, will likely go a long way for many top fighters. And then second, as Brian Stan's mentor told them, fighters likely need to find something outside of fighting while they are still active. A great example of this is Volkanovski and his Cooking with Volk channel, which is now popular with non-MMA fans. Like, there are people who know Volkanovski as the guy who cooks on YouTube instead of as the UFC featherweight champion. Another would be Peyton Tabbitt and his pursuit of art and music, something that will be able to occupy him once he leaves fighting behind. Another common example is coaching, with fighters like Eddie Alvarez, Robbie Lawler, and many others finding meaning and camaraderie in helping the next upcoming generation of fighters. Another great benefit of coaching is that it allows retired fighters to stay physically active, which, as was shown in the study I cited previously, helps to reduce anxiety among retired combat sports athletes. It is also one of the few professions that allows a fighter to use the skills that he learned while fighting. However, not everyone can become a coach, but it still leaves other options on the table, like Gilbert Burns starting a management agency while pursuing a grappling career in UFC BJJ. Overall, from my observations of fighters who have retired, the healthiest way for them to stay mentally sharp and mentally content in retirement is a combination of pursuing some sort of grappling art, be that wrestling in RAF or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then have another venture on top of that like Mighty Mouse's YouTube channel. And in both the physical and non-physical activity, the retired fighter's desire for competition and thrills should be placated to a degree without genuinely endangering them, which is why grappling arts, which cause minimal brain trauma, are the best fit here. And then finally, it would be good to make sure that friends and family are there to stop them from engaging in self-destructive behaviors like binge drinking or narcotics use, albeit this is something that is going to vary based on their individual situations. But anyways, that's the end of the video. This was a more serious one, but I hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.